লাইভ মাৰিয়ে দিলোঁ।
ভালে কৈছে, এইবিলাক কৰি থাকিবলৈ নাই আৰু ৰেকৰ্ডিঙো মাৰি দিলে, লাইভো মাৰি দিলে, চব হৈ যাব।
কথা নকওঁ।
কিমান দিন কৈছিলা ফেচবুকত তুমি?
Hello, Jaya.
Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you, ma? How are you? Are you able to see me?
Good evening, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, you are because you have the window behind you, so your face is coming dark, sir.
Okay, I should move to the other side. Okay.
Yes, sir. I think you should either face the window.
No. I will move to the other side of my house.
Yeah.
Oh, one second. Is it clear now? Better?
Sir, your video is kind of fixed. It's not moving.
Oh, no. The background, I had set it up for my classes. I can't.
But your entire video is fixed, sir. Even your face is fixed.
Face is fixed, is it?
Yes, sir. There is no movement which is coming.
1 second. Now? Is it okay?
Can't see you now, sir. No, sir. There is no video. No video at all, sir. It's totally black.
Oh, okay. Is there an internet connection here? I don't know. No, but the background is clear.
We were seeing a window behind you.
Even now?
No, now there is no video, sir, at all. It's only just your icon. Sir, you may just log out and then log in again.
देखो मैं कौन सा देने से अच्छा होगा क्योंकि मतलब बहुत बड़ा पिक्चर नहीं आएगा उसको सिंगल को इसमें साइज आएगा आज का सब कुछ नहीं आ पाएगा
Yes, sir.
Something is wrong, ma. I don't know.
I think there is a problem with the network.
Oh, network is fine because I was working all day. Should I connect to the my Airtel and see what happens? 1 second.
Okay, sir. Try.
One second.
Hi, Professor Service.
Yeah. 1 second. I'm just 1 second. Now I'll read. able to see me?
Yes, sir. It is fine now. It's
Okay,
fine.
all right, okay. Hi, Jan Savas, how are you? Good evening. Good evening, Professor Savas.
Professor Service, I think you need to unmute yourself.
Professor Savas is. Hello, yeah.
Maybe the picture is fixed. Okay, I'm back now.
Good evening, Professor.
Good evening, everybody.
Professor Sanjay here.
Oh, long time no see.
Long time no see. The Northeast connection. We traveled a lot there. Yep. Hi, Sunil. Hi, Joya. Hi, Sanjeev Kumar.
Hi, Professor Sanjay. How are you?
Fine, fine. Thank you. Fine, thank you.
Wonderful to see you, Professor
Yeah.
Sanjay.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. You are in that corner. I am in this corner.
We are all in different corners. Professor
Yeah,
Sabra is
different.
in a different corner. But
Yeah,
we are
yeah.
not cornered at all.
We are not cornered. COVID has cornered us.
COVID has cornered us. Yeah.
That's
We will
right.
learn to get out of that corner soon.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. How's everything?
Everything is fine. Wonderful.
Good, 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 good.
We miss you at IMC.
Ah, well. Well, the individuals have to miss institutions, and institutions have to miss individuals, right?
That's true.
philosophy.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. Anyway, I hear a lot of good things and see a lot of webinars and things like that going on.
That's true. That's
So
true.
I'm
A lot of activity, a lot of action, a lot of new things are happening.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an evolving thing, as usual.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm now actively associated with the Film Institute.
Oh, I see. Okay. And in Pune? In Manipal?
I'm part of their academic council, so we
Oh, that's great.
have a lot of commonalities to talk about.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, Joya, sorry, Sunil, we are just exchanging a bit of pleasantries. Is it okay? No issues? Okay.
Sure, sir. Go ahead. No problem.
Right. So, how are you, Professor? I'm not able to still get access to your book, but I saw the link. Professor Ram Savas?
Oh, you're talking to me? Okay.
Yeah.
The latest book on learning from communicators in social science, that's only available as an ebook so far.
Okay.
But it will be out as a hard copy, hopefully in early January.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Good, good. So, still remember the Sanjeev Kumar is there. Still remember the IMC.
Yeah.
Where he leaves a major booklet on communication for development.
Yes, that's right. Hello, Professor Raj Savras. This is Dr. Sanjeev Kumar here.
Yes, hello.
Wonderful to see you, and hopefully we'll be able to see and meet you in person soon.
Yeah, let's hope that this sad experience of COVID and everything which comes with it is over soon, although
That's right.
it's still to be seen how soon means to be.
Correct.
Okay. So, Sunil, what's up?
Sunil, you are muted.
Sunil, you're muted. You're muted, Sunil.
Okay, how are you? Welcome to, though virtually, to the department.
Yeah.
Sanjay and Sanjeev ji and
Thank you.
Professor Service.
Pleasure,
Welcome you all.
The good news is neither you nor I have to rush to the finance to get our bill clear.
Welcome, Sisir Babu. Sisir ji, good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Yeah. And it's very cold, I believe, in Benares.
Yes, it is. Today it was quite cold. It is.
Yeah. We missed you yesterday in the beginning, but you were
No,
there.
I caught you up.
Yeah. During David presentation, you were there. Yeah. You
Yes.
joined. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Anjuman, we can start, I believe.
Professor Sanjay, sir, have you mailed your PPT to me, sir?
I have, yeah.
Okay, sir. I think we will start.
Have you got it, Joya?
Yes, sir, we got it. Thank you.
Maybe the order is, it's okay. All right, just for the purpose of my own supplement. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Professor Zoya, can you mail it to me also?
Good evening and a warm welcome to each one of you on day 2 of the international webinar on SDG sensitive risk communication and community engagement responses to COVID-19. As you are already aware, it's an initiative of the Department of Mass Communication and Journalism, Jodhpur University, done in collaboration with UNICEF. So we opened to a very wonderful inaugural ceremony yesterday and overwhelming response from the speakers and the participants. We had as an opening lecture a talk by Professor David Mould, where he talked about the general principles and the issues in risk communication during emergencies. And we are really overwhelmed by the kind of response we've been receiving for this webinar. In fact, yesterday we faced some major technical problems. First, we had the Google server down worldwide for 45 minutes, and we were wondering whether we'll be able to open on time. But then the moment we opened, we were like, full to the brim, and due to some technical difficulties, we could admit only 100 participants to our Google Meet link. But then we were able to reach over 1,200 participants through Facebook and many more through YouTube. So thank you so much to everyone for the kind of response you've given us. We're really grateful. And today we go on to another day where we would like to welcome amongst us 2 of the best known names in the field of communication, particularly communication for development, Professor Jan Service and Professor B.P. Chanchal. So Professor Jan Service is Professor Emeritus at the Catholic University of Leuven, Belgium, and Professor B.P. Chanchal is currently Professor Communication and Media Studies at the Manipal Institute of Communication, Manipal, India. And I will not go on to introduce them further because I would now want to introduce to you all our moderator for this evening, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, who will tell you more about our invited speakers. Of course, they hardly need any introduction, but we will go ahead with these formalities. I will first now introduce to you Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, I think before we go on to the formal introductions, it's very important to tell you this, that he is in fact has been associated with our department for a very long time now, and he has guided us in many ways. His expertise and his domain knowledge, his practical experience in the field of communication for development has been a great source of learning for us and for our students, and he has been associated for us for a very long time now, and he's part of the Tejpur University Mass Communication and Department family, in fact. So professionally, he has over 30 years of experience with core competency in communication, training and capacity building, strategy development, management consulting, corporate social responsibility, particularly in the area of health, education and nutrition communication, marketing, rural development, hygiene and sanitation, media and content production, and much more. He has worked in domains like development, health, family welfare, HIV/AIDS, nutrition, tuberculosis, leprosy, cancer, rural development, gender, adolescents, and youth. In fact, he has also contributed to the area of PRI, WASH, environment, sustainability, energy, and most recently COVID-19. He has worked with national and international NGOs, central and state governments, academic and educational institutions, private and corporate sectors, donors, funders, multilateral, bilateral, and foundations. He has provided technical assistance to national and state government ministries, departments, private sector agencies, UN agencies, bilateral and multilateral agencies and corporates. So I welcome Dr. Sanjeev Kumar in our midst today, and we're grateful that you've agreed to moderate this session for us. Thank you, sir. And I would like to now hand over to you.
Thank you, Anjuman. Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible, Anjuman?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be invited for this particular session with two stalwarts from across the country, across the globe, and thank you very much. Sanjay, can you mute your mic for a while?
Sure, sorry.
Not at all. So thank you very much, Anjuman and Mass Communication Journalism Department, Tejpur University. It's a pleasure to be invited. It's always a pleasure to go there and meet the professors, the students, and the other faculty members, and to learn together and to take this journey on communication for development journey together. And congratulations for them to undertake this momentous task of getting the people from around the world to talk, to listen, to learn in the challenging times of COVID-19. I have been in particular in Delhi. I work out of Delhi. We have been associated with Ministry of Health, with WHO, with ICMR, and with other state government organizations, especially, and UNICEF in particular, who have been instrumental in developing communication strategies and communication response, C4D response for and risk communication response during this time. And it is heartening to have Professor Shriyant Savras, and he needs no introduction. He was a UNESCO chair for communication and sustainable change at University of Massachusetts in Amherst. He has been editor of book series on communication for development and social change and communication, globalization and cultural histories. He has undertaken research, development and advisory work around the world, and the author of journal articles and books on such topics as international and development communication, ICT and media policies, intercultural communication, participation and social change, and human rights and conflict management. He is also known for his multiplicity paradigm in communication for development. one word, multiple cultures. Sevras has taught international communication and development communication in Australia, in Brisbane, in Belgium, in USA, in Netherlands, in Thailand. He has been president of the European Consortium for Communication Research and vice president of the International Association for Media and Communication Research, in charge of the academic publications and research. He chaired the scientific committee of the World Congress on Communication for Development organized by the World Bank and FAO and communication initiatives held in Rome. He is currently serving as Professor Emeritus, Catholic Universities in Leuven in Belgium. Welcome, Professor Sevras. It's a pleasure to have you around, and we are really excited to have you here and listen to the wonderful, I'm very excited by even the title of your presentation, the 18th missing goal in SDGs, the missing 18th SDG, communication for all in the age of COVID-19. I think communication sometimes is taken for granted, and we were told by JHU guys in Baltimore that it's the Stephanie, and we bring it up when we probably need it to explain something. I'm very excited to look at and listen to your deliberation. I also would like to welcome Professor BP Sanjay. Professor Sanjay, I got to know during MIC days and when he was director, the Indian Institute of Mass Communication in Delhi. It's such a pleasure to have you around, Sanjay, and look forward to your deliberations and musings on the discussion topics which we are excitedly looking forward to. Currently, Professor Sanjay is Professor of Communication and Media Studies, Manipal Institute of Communication in Manipal. Professor Sanjay has nearly 4 decades of experience in teaching and research in media and communication studies. He had his basic academic training in communication and journalism in Bangalore, as it is called now, and obtained a PhD from Simon Fraser University, Canada. He taught at Madras University and MS University, Tirunelveli, before he moved to University of Hyderabad as the dean and a professor in 1995. He was involved in studying the historic site experiment, as they call it, and his professional experience and interests are in the area of political economy of information and communication technologies, development communication, and international communication. He has been associated with various national and international bodies that chalk out policies on media education and research. He was the director of the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Delhi, and I had the pleasure of working and knowing him during that time very closely. Professor Sanjay served as Pro Vice Chancellor at Hyderabad University before becoming the first Vice Chancellor of the Central University of Tamil Nadu, Tiruvannamalai, between 2009 and 2014. After the tenure of Vice President, Professor BP Sanjay has resumed his work at the Manipal Institute of Communication in Teaching and Research in Media and Communication Studies. Thank you very much for the esteemed guest today. I am really excited to have you around, and we look forward to your deliberations and insights into the current situation from a communication perspective. And I would advise our attendees who have joined from across the globe to hold their breath and listen to them carefully. And maybe when they have questions, just as a house rule, please keep your questions ready or posted in the Q&A box. We will take the questions after the 2 sessions or deliberations are over, and we'll try to respond to the questions as many as possible as the time permits. So without wasting any more time, Professor Sevras, over to you. We look forward to listening to you on the wonderful deliberation that you have crafted for us on the missing 18th SDG, communication for all in the age of COVID-19. Over to you, Professor Sevras. You are muted, Professor Sevras. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you once again for the kind invitation and introduction. May I ask the organizers whether they have received my PowerPoint and whether that can be used during my presentation, or should I give it a try myself?
We have received your presentation. We'll be sharing it.
But you will share it late afterwards, this presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then I may try then to put up my own PowerPoint, but let me just, by way of introduction, thank you once again for the invitation. I vividly recall the time I spent at your university so many months ago. This is, of course, in no way a possibility to replace it, but at least we have established something like a technological link to continue the discussions and and dialogue which are needed even today. I have put myself with, for many people, interesting background. Don't we all like to be at the beach at the moment? It's just an artificial, a fake background, which you can manipulate through the software package we are using now. I'm currently not in Belgium, as you kindly introduced me as affiliated to the University in Leuven, but I'm currently in Chiang Mai in Thailand, so not that far from where most of you are sitting and living. Okay, my presentation today is indeed titled The Missing 18th Sustainable Development Goal, and that missing development goal can be called communication for all. And of course, as we are discussing COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything related to it, we can also ask ourselves, so what's so important about that missing development goal? I think it's even more important now than 10, 15 years ago when the discussion about the Millennium Development Goals started, although even in those days there were people, including myself, who raised the issue of Asian goal. Focus on distribute these goals more widely with all the communication means and tools available to us. But although it was 2003 or 4, if I'm not mistaken, that these discussions started, and now we are 15, 16 years later, and these goals are still reference to what we call the 18th Sustainable Development Goal, communication for all. And as I already mentioned, that's becoming more and more important in the age of COVID-19 and everything which has the pandemic caused as a result. So I would like to structure my presentation in a number of ways. I would like to give a bit of background and history to the current discussion. So I start briefly with a reference to the Millennium Development Goals. As all of you know, they were inaugurated in 2000 at the change of the millennium. And then the transition to the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, which we're currently experiencing and working in. And they will last until 2013. And then the question is, what will come next? I'm currently co-editing a book for Palgrave on the Sustainable Development Goals and the future of the Sustainable Development Goals. And our question indeed is, what will come next? Because it's obvious from today that we will not be able to meet all the major goals agreed upon in 2015. We will still have a lot of work left for us when we approach 2013, I'm afraid. Okay, so I try to give a bit of a transition from the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, to the SDGs, then also highlight once again the need for that 18th SDG, and then finalize, so to speak, with what I call a communication framework to tackle pandemic.
Can I ask you, are you sharing your PPT on your screen, or?
I could give it a try. Yes. Let me see.
Yeah. So there is a present now button there on the right corner.
We could do it for you, sir. We could present the PPT for you. Shall we do it?
Let me just try it myself, because that makes it easier for me, I guess.
Yeah, so there is a present now button. If you click there, you have to just
yes.
say share screen.
And then I need to go to your entire screen, I guess.
Yes, that's right.
And then I'll need to go out and start the PowerPoint.
That's right. You have to click on your PowerPoint. It will show on the entire screen. Have you clicked your present share now button?
Yes, and do you see it now? Because I
No.
can see it on my screen.
It's not share.
No, it's not. Then there's something wrong there.
Now first press the present now button. It will go to your middle of your screen and it will say share. Just click that central part of the screen, then share the PPT.
That's what I've been doing, but it doesn't work.
Oh.
I'm going to try it one more time.
Anjuman, would you like to do it from there and Professor can say next slide?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, let's do that, yes.
Okay.
Is it visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Can you make it full screen?
Yeah.
Or is it a PDF?
It's a PDF.
Okay.
Okay, then we have to scroll it, right? But
That's right.
so you're going to do it for me, right? So
Yeah.
this was the opening title. I've also mentioned the presentation outline. That's number 2. So scroll down, please. And then that's the second one, yes. So that's what I aim to achieve during my presentation. And then we move to the first group of sheets. That's the Millennium Development Goals. So as you may recall, next one, please. Right, that one. So as you may recall, in 2000, when those Millennium Development Goals were agreed and discussed, a lot of countries and a lot of people were excited about it, and I must say I was one of them. But gradually we figured out that they didn't cover all the problems we were, so to speak, facing in the development community. And so, in a nutshell, we thought that they were too bureaucratic to be capable of addressing all the problems from, let's say, a grassroots or a participatory perspective. So they were mainly looking at development as an engineering problem. Technologists, architects, and engineers who could solve problems for us, and that's a typical modernization approach. Governments doing things on behalf of people and assuming that people don't have a voice to be reckoned with. So development seen as an engineering problem to be solved from a top-down perspective, and of course it also leads to very reductionist views on development, very causal perspectives. One is the outcome of the other, one follows, etc. Well, by now we know that development is a very complex and multi-faceted problem, and so some variables may not be available in the initial discussion, but will determine or maybe overtake the bulk of the discussion at a later stage. And what is normally being discussed are quantitative criteria rather than qualitative criteria. So many values in development are not quantifiable. They need to be addressed from a more qualitative perspective. Values like freedom, tolerance, equality, it's very difficult to pin them down to data and figures. So they were obviously also missing in the discussion on the Millennium Development Goals, and especially in a combined fashion like human and indigenous rights, communication and culture. They were not properly addressed at that stage. So they were bureaucratic and ambitious, but they were up to a point also quite narrow and quantitative in their approach to the issues of development goals. Let's go to the second or the next sheet, please. But nevertheless, these Millennium Development Goals, they have done something good. They have achieved quite a number of things, and here is in small print, so maybe not easy to read in the background. But basically, the successes of the Millennium Development Goals can be summarized under a number of concepts, but mainly related to schooling and health-related issues. Primary education has improved, the issue of health and sanitation, and up to a point women's health have improved. Up to a point also more longer term and general kind of aims like the participation of women in political processes and activities. All these things can be considered to be successes, but up to a point they were only reaching certain objectives and not the final destination many of the people involved in the discussion had hoped for. So they went for a more ambitious scheme, but also a more realistic scheme, in the sense that they wanted to bring them all together under more realistic options. Let's go to the next sheet, please. And so by certain standards, people have argued that it was the Sustainable Development Goals were a major reboot, while others have argued it's just another acronym for more or less the same. Now, let's start with a major reboot concept and the ambitious concept, which is also written down in what they call the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, is a plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity. It also seeks to strengthen universal peace in larger freedom. We recognize that eradicating poverty in all its forms and dimensions, including extreme poverty, is the greatest global challenge and an indispensable requirement for sustainable development. So very ambitious, very forward-looking, one could say. And next sheet, please. And one also can see that manifested in the way these new set of goals have been formatted. Instead of 8 Millennium Development Goals, we have now 17. And you can look at it briefly: end poverty, end hunger, well-being, quality education, gender equality, water and sanitation. So they have been narrowed down to, obviously, or at first sight, more realistic objectives. And if you go into more detail, you will say, yes, one goal is more realistic than another goal, and one goal is more achievable than the second or the third one. But nevertheless, next sheet, please. Nevertheless, one needs certain kind of elements to evaluate these goals. And one normally agrees that one needs at least 3 criteria to make a proper evaluation or validation of a goal. First is a numerical outcome, a percentage or a number, so to speak, a specific deadline, by when, by what date a goal needs to be made or met. And thirdly, a well-defined domain, so one has to define what kind of goal one wants to aim for. And looking at from these 3 criteria, one again has to say these 17 goals are not all achievable set by these 3 criteria. Some targets can be set and can be achieved. They are verifiable, but others are not. And it is fair to say that the goals which are more realistic are the ones which are more aimed at goals set for so-called developing countries, not so much the developed countries, because they have been from the very beginning welcoming a new discussion, welcoming the evaluation of the main development goals, but they were very reluctant to become self-critical and put themselves into the picture. And that is easy to identify if you see that targets like overweight or obesity and breastfeeding are not fully developed in the Sustainable Development Goals, while especially the one on obesity is definitely a valid one also for the developed countries. So there was a reluctance at the side of the developed countries to come up with very specific, quantifiable and time-bound targets. So the critics of all of this, they therefore argue there is not much difference and dissimilarity between the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals. And in a way, those which are achievable were already achievable under the Millennium Development Goals. Although, once again, the number of goals have broadened from 8 to 17, and the number of targets have also increased substantially. But again, at that level, the targets, there are officially 169 ones and only 30 very concrete targets. Let's move on. Next sheet. So those critics, they say, in order to do it well, in order to come up with a proper program, another platform, another set of sustainable development goals, we need to go beyond the traditional ways of looking at this. We need to include civil society, think tanks, academics, but more in particular the people at large or the citizens in countries to hear their voice and to ask them what is important and how to achieve these goals. And that's obviously apart from a couple of specific cases, not the way these sustainable development goals have been set up and are being worked out. A major question in that regard is how can global targets make a difference at national and subnational levels? That's a question, of course, which comes with any kind of discussion on multilateralism and universal validities and international collaboration, but it is once again also a problem here at this very ambitious objective of sustainable development goals. So that's, so to speak, the context in which we can look at this discussion. And then let me go to the next sheet and highlight the one which is missing, namely the communication for all, the 18th, or what we call the 18th Sustainable Development Goal. Can I have the next sheet, please? Thank you. Okay, and as I said, the discussion started already in the early 2000s, but the major push has been given around 2010, and some people who are worth naming are two representatives of the WACC, the World Association for Christian Communication, Lee and Vargas, and they have also produced an interesting book, which is available for those of you interested in reading it. They made the well-documented and specific and detailed argument that unless we include an 18th Sustainable Development Goal, namely communication for all, we cannot really aim for a proper achievement of the 17 other development goals. So we should, at maybe this late stage of the game, but we should incorporate it in all the discussions going on and continuing from now onwards. They defined the Sustainable Development Goal 18, Communication for All, with the goal to expand and strengthen public civic spaces through equitable and affordable access to communication technologies and platforms, media pluralism, and media diversity. And I once again direct you to the book, their book, to look for more details. One organization which has picked up that discussion was a group in Montreal in Canada, and they in June or July of this year came up with a statement on communication for all. What does it mean for us living in the digital age? And they have therefore agreed to what they call a Montreal Statement on Sustainability in the Digital Age, which is on our next targeted communication, engagement and education. So it's a holistic approach to what is needed for the future of us as a society. And I just making a comment. I would have liked them replacing the references to access with the reference to participation, because in my opinion and in my work, access is just the first step on the road to full participation, so to speak. So access is, of course, the entry gate to full participation, but it is not the end destination for a sustainable communication for all strategy. So in my own work, and that is available in articles and books, and let's go to the next sheet, please. I've highlighted a couple of challenges which are still there in our discussion on sustainable development goals. Firstly, how can we bring together the right stakeholders at the right time in the right place? I'm not saying that's only a coalition of people's communities, people's organizations, or the right stakeholders. We need to be realistic and incorporate also private enterprise and major corporations, but we need to incorporate a representative sample of all these stakeholders, and that's still up for discussion, especially at international levels. Second, how do we make difficult trade-offs, meaning not only trade-offs in the economic sense, but one cannot achieve all of these goals at once at the same time. So we need to be strategic and negotiate the phasing in and phasing out of some of these. And that's often a difficult task for all groups committed to such kind of exercise. Thirdly, how do we build in accountability and transparency for action? So all this should take place in an open environment, in a public space, so that people can participate freely and know what they are talking about, so that no decisions have to be made in small circles behind closed doors, etc. Fourthly, how to organize this in a participatory and democratic way. That's probably saying the same as the first and the third challenge, but it at least highlights and emphasizes once again that we pay and we advocate for a participatory and democratic process rather than a process which tends to be too often a top-down approach at international and governmental levels. And then fifthly, as the 18th Sustainable Development Goal is not yet fully in place, we definitely need to give it its proper place and function, and therefore also an additional challenge in all of this. Now, in our deliberations, we've also taken in the discussion on COVID-19, and by way of summary or by way of conclusion or introduction of a possible discussion, let's go to the next sheet. We have presented, or we are presenting, a so-called communication framework to tackle pandemics, and we had, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic in mind while discussing and drafting this. We've done this in a phased way by in total 11 steps, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, 11 steps. So I'm going quite fast through these different steps, and you can look them up for yourself afterwards if you want to. But we need to start at a certain level, and in order to go for the multidimensionality and the complexity of such a framework, we've opted for a national approach. So we should start at the National Communication Task Force, but that may well be in an Indian context a more state-based approach or a provincial approach. or a regional approach in certain other contexts. But I think it's important, and that's what we are advocating for, that there is a coherent a grouping of representatives and people involved in such a task force. It shouldn't be the exclusive domain of specialists and government officials and bureaucrats, so to speak. What does the task force have to do? That's step 2. They have to identify the target audiences, the language and the communication channels. And in multilingual countries, and India is an example, it is more complex than the sticking language we are using like English, but we should be aware that every language comes with its own culture and elements related to that. So then we move to step 3. Which may sound a bit strange as a step 3, but given what we've experienced over the past couple of years, I'm not only referring to the United States for the president who has been accused of putting up more lies than truths in his public performances, but the issue of misinformation, fake news, and the mixture of all of that, the latest catchy word, and that's why I made a reference to my background in today's presentation, is deep fakes. So the argument is that with artificial intelligence, we can put up a show and pretend to be somewhere where we don't happen to be, and we can, or I can be given words that I don't utter, but a smart videographer can manipulate it in such a way that it sounds all natural. So all these things to be addressed as misinformation and fake issues, they have contaminated the objectives set for such a group of people who are genuinely interested in a framework to tackle pandemics, because they have to handle also all the hacks and all the attempts by hackers and lobbyists to manipulate the data and to present a picture which is not helpful or useful for the proper identification of issues and the proper tackling of the pandemic. That's step 3. Step 4, which goes in a combined fashion, is who will be the representatives, who will be the people to transmit the message, transmit the information. In the past, we have been exposed to concepts like opinion leaders, etc. Nowadays, one talks about champions, social influencers. But we should not limit it to individuals. We should also look for community representatives and sometimes representatives of certain community aspects, like faith community, etc., to assist us and to help us with such an exercise. But what is very important, and that is step 5, so the next sheet, is to make all of this. Next sheet, please. Because I'm also overusing my time. And step. Because I'm also overusing my time. And step 10 and 11 are the ways to evaluate, to monitor, and to reorganize or to organize the supplementary, the next phase of such a communication framework. So what we try to advocate for is an ongoing exercise and an ongoing process, which has, of course, a start and a finish, but which is also circular in the attempts to make it more achievable and more complicated and sophisticated each time the process starts and evolves. That brings me to my last sheet. For those of you interested in, that's the way of conclusion. I quote one of the drafters. Many of you may not know this person. He happens to be a country man of me. He's also Belgian, Jan van der Moortel. He worked for UNDP and the Millennium Development Goals. He was one of the drafters of the Millennium Development Goals. He, in his assessment, says the Sustainable Development Goals offer a better framework than the Millennium Development Goals, but considerably more work is required to turn their potential into a practical reality. So it's still work in progress. And talking for a mainly Indian audience, I want to remind us that one of the great philosophers, economists, and thinkers is one of your countrymen, Amartya Sen, and he, in his famous quote, says, "The deciding issue has to be one of democracy. An overarching value must be the need for participatory decision-making on the kind of society people want to live in, based on open discussion with adequate opportunity for the expression of minority positions." Okay, thank you very much for your interest. If you are interested in more, there are 2 more sheets, one with 2 books which I advertise, Sustainable Development Goals in the Asian context, and the other one is a handbook of communication for development and social change, which are both on the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Savas. It's fascinating how you defined and outlined the process of communication, response, and integration into SDGs as a critical element. There are a couple of questions in the chat box. We'll take them after Sanjay makes his presentation. Thank you very much for your time and a wonderful, thought-provoking presentation with very interesting questions. I myself has a couple of them, but I'll take them after the participants' questions are taken up. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank the organizers for their invitation. And let me see whether I can go on to my presentation. Entire screen. All right. Let me take. Is this clear now? Is the screen presentation clear? Yeah?
No, Sanjay, it's not clear. No, it's not up as of now.
It's not visible, sir.
It's not visible.
You have to go present now and then click on that and then click on your presentation.
Share your small screen.
Click on that center and then you will be able to see your sharing screen and then click on your presentation.
1 second. Present now.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
A window, your entire screen.
Entire screen.
Okay, done.
And then click on your presentation.
Now?
Not yet. Anjuman, can you take it from there?
Yes, sir. I'll do that.
And then Professor can say next slide. Don't worry about it. Sanjay, I think she'll listen to you and shift your slides. No issue.
All right. Fine. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, Sanjeev, it's a bit of a intriguing title. Paradigm Continuity and SDGs. I am not going to get into the COVID dynamics at all. I believe that since yesterday, it's been COVID all the way. Now, why do I call it as a paradigm continuity? Having been a student of development and also my experience coinciding with the decades of development that we have had, we often see various stages in which communication and media gets foregrounded within the development paradigm of that particular time. We have had discussions on dominant paradigm, etc., etc. And Professor Jan also mentioned some of the aspects and focused on participation, access, and so on. Now, what are the defining paradigms of development as we understand, particularly in the framework of media? Next slide. Do you have paradigm continuity? Yeah. Next slide. Yeah.
Just give me a moment, sir. We're just trying to sort this out. I'm sharing it immediately, sir. Just give me one.
I'm on the paradigm continuity slide.
Yes, sir, I'll do it.
Yeah. Should I get out? Is it on, Joya?
Continue to speak. Wait,
All right.
just
The paradigm that I'm talking about is the advocacy phase of media development, where many of the dimensions of modernization and development were brought into the fore to talk about the need for media and the classical notion of its multiplier potential, along with many other countries, particularly in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. We have seen subsequent discussions as to how media centricity has failed. Now, this is not to suggest that media did not grow. Media, in fact, grew exponentially in many countries, giving a lot of hope to the fact that here we have media and development should automatically flow. Did that happen? And if yes, how did it happen? If no, why it did not happen? Many of us in the development sector have lamented and commented on the structural limitations that were more important than just the information and the presence of media. So, when the SDG framework came about, Sabas has already given the historical continuity from MDJ to SDG. I was looking at the framework document of SDG and the Indian context. One of the important annexures for the document is the theory of change. Now, this theory of change is slightly different from the theories that laid more stress on people and the need for informing them. This theory of change lays more importance on institutional dynamics. Nevertheless, one of the continuity aspects of theory of change is the subsuming of media as an effective partner in SDG. Now, what is happening is that we live in a fairly media enhanced and media access context. There might be many of you who still would argue and quibble about the digital divide and the last mile problem. I'm in agreement with you, but also feel that we have come a long way in looking at what has happened to our media. Now, Joya, are you on this slide? Joya? Joya?
Sanjay, we are on a slide which is entitled Paradigm Continuity and Push for Communication, Media and Agendas.
No, I want that India SDG document.
Okay.
Theory of
The Niti
change.
Aayog one.
The sixth slide, please.
Okay.
Sixth slide.
One, Zoya, one more. Yeah, this one. Yeah, we are on the India SDG document, sir.
Yeah. If all of you look at the framing parameters, and if I were to take along as to where and how the theory of change and the SDG goals have potential for intersection, but have not taken place. My overarching comment, which is a critique available in various forums, including national and international media, is where and how SDGs is present or not present at all in the media ecosystem of our country. We spent a lot of our time during the COVID agonizing over inconclusive murder or suicide of a film actor. And if one calculates time, the energy, the spectrum space, etc., I don't want to monetize them, you would realize that entire prime time evening discussions in newspapers were spent on something that probably is way beyond what we expect in terms of development. Now, if you look at the bigger picture here, SDGs and its realization, for example, we are placed at 117 in the SDG index of the world. Why are we at 117? There are various blocks here which talks about the fact that inequities prevail. There is considerable amount of poaching of natural resources. There is lack of representation in terms of gender, etc., both by way of content and, as some of you have pointed out, by way of representation as well in the media. Can we go to the slide 7, please? Now, why do I call it paradigm? UN and many other agencies, not to put them in the dock, but academically, we have to recognize that any time a major intervention is needed, they always advocate and talk about the media. So, in the SDG framework, they launched what we call as the SDG Media Compact. Now, why do I bring this? Now, you will see here uh, there is an expectation, there is a target, and there is an advocacy and media. Hark back to diffusion studies, pro-development soap operas, missing link argument of Maitland. You will find many of these arguments built into the very same philosophy that we are talking about. Now, what happens in, they say news media can be an ally. Is unused media, can unused media be an ally? 400 plus news channels. And what is their agenda as of now? Now, you would be surprised that in the media compact of the 100 organizations, there is none from India, including our erstwhile development elephant called Doordarshan. Community radio is there, but even they do not yet formally talk about SDG. Maybe their work does touch upon some of the SDGs as well. We go to slide number 10. Now, this is an international argument and an analysis which talks about how and whether SDGs figures at all in the media, and if it does, in what manner. Now, we'll go to slide number 12. Now, why do again I talk about paradigm? As of 2019, the World Bank and client governments developed once again a behavioral change paradigm wherein they talk about what the media can do to bring about a behavior change. That's the old paradigm and the critique of individual versus community, as in India requires a communitarian dimension, but the argument seems to be in favor of individuals. We can talk about it, but that is something that we have to remember. Media and entertainment is another factor. This was, as of 2020, Abhijit Banerjee, the Nobel laureate, and the Secretary, Department of Culture, also talked about. Hark back to 1986, 87, when Simplementa Mera, soap operas, etc., were still advocated as effective channels of information then. Now it is edutainment. Now, what is happening is the World Bank says that Hollywood, Bollywood, and Nollywood, Nigeria, India, and probably the world can be roped in to talk about development. Slide number 16, please. Now, I have taken a media monitoring slide from the Borders, Reporters Without Borders, and I have cut the slides into various phases. And when I was looking at paradigm, the first slide that I have cut, you will see it as develop media for awareness. Next slide I look at is the disappointment. The development is not the agenda, and entertainment is driving the media. Now, when I see it is seek media as alliance partners. Now, this slide is crucial because to me it represents the continuity of a paradigm change. Just for our awareness, I looked at post COVID-19 media, unfortunately, for various reasons, is on the low performing index of the economy today. But are we seeing a shift? If we are seeing a shift, why is the spread important? If at all we believe in paradigm and we want to seek them as partners, what is the media spread we have? Can you go to, can you go to slide 24, please? 24, please, yeah. What has happened is that the free lunch of advertising is not there. Media spread is there, but the paid subscription is the onus, is the parameter. So what is likely to happen is the spread and what John talked about, access is going to move into a paid model. Why do I pay for? Do I pay for entertainment? Do I pay for development? I do not know, but classically, always entertainment triumphs over development. What happens? What happens is the slide number 26 here. Now, this is interesting. I was looking at September 2020 analysis of the diffusion theory applied to digital diffusion understanding. All the notions of early adopters, laggards, etc., are once again revisited with their characteristics. This is September 2020. Now, look at slide number 27. You have the whole present economics as to what brings an idea to the screen. Now, who has to ally with somebody is a question of monetization and the incentive that the media has for development. We have an SDG index, the highest in the world, I think is about, John would correct me, is about 80 to 83. Our highest is in the range of 67, 68. We also find, now, is there a correlation between the southern states, media saturation, and the red states? Red, please don't, no connotation of red here, the red coloration in the map, that's what I'm trying to say. And is there a less media saturation there? We do not know. We'll have to look into that. So I would kind of rest my case here to conclude by saying that SDG or development is not necessarily the factor, but where and how we can partner with media has been a contentious terrain all through. But the paradigm continues to argue that media, communication, awareness, motivation, and behavioral change are the dominant forms of bringing about change. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Sanjay. It's a fascinating presentation, and the way you have connected things and cross-connected things from SDGs to SDGs and the continuity paradigm. It's amazing to look at that. I'm not going to summarize things because I think they are so well presented and so flowing that it is self-explanatory and probably leaves a lot of thought to the viewers and the attendees. There are interesting questions in the chat box, so I would rather give more time and space to the questions. Jan, there are initial questions which were addressed to you. Shall I read it out for them and you can choose to answer the way you want? Sudendu had asked a question. What are the challenges of achieving SDG goals, particularly goal number 2 and 3, in developing countries, particularly for the most marginalized communities and their children in global South and South Asian countries? What should be the top priority in designing communication for development strategies for them? Although this question is a little beyond today's presentation and your overall framework, but if you would like to answer that, that'll be okay.
Okay, question by question, right? So,
Right.
Thank you for this one. Yeah, that's a very important question, but it would lead me a bit off the topic if I would have to address this in very specific ways. But what I try to do with the highlighting of these 5 challenges is to give you a way of looking at these problems, which is atypical for the way it has been addressed so far. So far, we have always been discussing these issues on a one-issue basis, while the issue for the future is to put it all together in a mix or in a complexity which forces us to become more strategic in the way we decide in favor of this or against that. It's not an either or, it's just that we need to be conscious of the consequences of prioritizing this against something else. And if it comes to minorities and women's rights or the rights of the less advantaged citizens in a society, those are always the ones which so far have been overlooked when it comes to the challenges these organizations and decision makers in particular have been addressing and facing. So I could easily, or not so easily at the moment, but I could send you some additional documentation if there is a need for such kind of further scrutiny.
Thank you, John. And I think Sanjay's paper, which is referenced specifically to the Indian context of how SDGs are being addressed and tackled by Niti Aayog, could also be relevant to look at specifically how individual SDGs, especially 2 and 3, within the context the question is situated, could be useful. The second question Madan Babu has asked to you is communication and culture, how they are connected, as culture is mostly individual, indigenous, and specific. I'm just trying to understand the question that culture could be very location specific or individual or indigenous, where communication is an overarching cross-cutting thing. So how are they connected and how they can be worked around in the SDGs with the framework which you presented and the overall your suggestion of the 18th goal in SDG?
Yeah, if we would go for a definition of what's communication, what's culture, then we may differ in defining what we mean by this, because I don't see culture individualistic and location based. I think culture is communication sometimes is, but in a communication context, and when you have a discussion on communication, it's either a technical discussion or a much more culturalized discussion, meaning that it is about people exchanging opinions and ideas and hence creating culture. But so it's not clear to me what is meant by putting communication and culture as opposing or contradictory terms. I rather consider it as part of a way of looking at a certain problem, and sometimes the problem is to be looked upon in a combined fashion, sometimes in a much more isolated fashion, meaning that indeed you can distinguish between communication channels and communication technologies and communication tools versus cultural values and cultural ways of expressing things.
Thank you, John. Zoya or Anjuman, can I request you to pose the second question? For some reason, the chat in my box is completely erased.
Sure.
But John, I have one question personally before Zoya or Anjuman ask you this question. I'm very fascinated by your positing, and somebody had asked this question in the chat also about positing the 18th SDG as communication for all, and obviously the stepwise presentation of the framework which you presented. I'm a little intrigued by the question that why communication did not get a centrality in the overall SDGs as a driving force, and since it is generally assumed and taken as a cross-cutting issue, and which is subsumed in each and every of the other SDGs, and sometimes that's why it is not taken as a specific separate entity and presume that it is there. Does that affect it being a powerful tool or taken up on priority with commitments and targets, or does it get diffused if it is spread over in the underlying way in the other SDGs? Are you suggesting that underlying cross-cutting thing needs to be segregated, which will give it more focus as well as impact?
It's a matter of both, but just to answer the first line of your question, it's a matter of power. I can give you my own experience, for instance, in acting and working through the United Nations system or through NGO systems and discussions with people in decision-making positions. They know that communication is what we are doing. That's the cement we use to exchange, so to speak. But when it comes to decision-making, they take that as a given. They are not really interested in giving it its prominence, which is often needed. So, just in a very clear, straightforward way. Why is UNESCO one of the UN agencies which has to deal with communication? Why is it not the first important UN agency within the UN system? Because it's considered to be a technical facilitator of an assistant to other agencies. And that's how the Millennium Development Goals were also conceptualized. They were talking about food, they were talking about health, women and other people's health. So they focused on the targets which were part of the other UN organizational's mandates. And communication was not even considered in that regard. So my argument has always been as a matter of power. My struggle with many of these representatives of other agencies, be it FAO or WHO, has always focused on the need for a proper communication perspective, but they then translate communication into public relations or journalism. And we, as a communication discipline, we are partly also responsible for the misunderstanding of what communication is about, because we have too often translated it in a tool-based fashion. So what can you do with it? What kind of people do you need to communicate for and with? And that resulted in the need for journalists, the need for PR people, etc. While in fact we need to take it up to a higher, more abstract maybe level, and properly address the need for communication as the way to establish human relationships.
Thank you, John. I'm just stretching the point a little that if I'm able to get you correctly, are you suggesting that since there is no UN body for communication, and communication can mean communication in a technological sense and a sociological sense, and also from journalistic and media and entertainment perspective, and Sanjay did talk about SDG Media Compact. How do you see that happening? Are we specifically referring to people communication, program communication, or development communication as a SDG?
No, I liked Sanjay's presentation, and he rightly hit the nail on the head, so to speak, with the reference to edutainment education, or EE as it was called a few years ago. Indeed, that is still a very modernistic perspective on communication, and that has been still given a lot of attention even in today's discussion with COVID-19. I agree that the entertainment value of the media has always overtaken the content, the quality value of what communication should be about. And the media, of course, they play their own role because that's their bread and butter. They need to have their channels to transmit these messages, rather than paying proper attention to what the message is about. It's more than just entertaining people, especially nowadays, and that's what may be the newness in the discussion nowadays. The social media are starting up or forcing us to think the communication process through in different ways. It's no longer a linear process. It's no longer a process which is conceptualized by one or two, or a monopoly of sorts, and then distributed. It's all of us, social media activists, who contribute to that process. But the danger of this is because that process can also be easily hacked and easily manipulated, and that's obviously happening far too often these days. But if we go back to the origins of what social media represented and were meant to be, then we might be able to give it its proper face, and might be able to come up with alternatives for the kind of technological takeover of the social media which is happening today. So maybe in one sentence back to Sanjay's argument, indeed, we need to move away from a technical perspective on the media, and we need to give it more content and people involvement in it.
Thank you, John. Sanjay, can I bring you in here, because this is cross-referencing to the presentation and the angle you presented. Would you like to take on that how your idea and your analysis of the media compact and John's idea in terms of the overall communication for all as an SDG, and going beyond just the technological so-called freedom of access by social media, and social media actually bringing in everybody on the space. Does that kind of explain the challenges which we are facing when we have free media? But also it could also mean that if it was in the hand of, let's say, governments, or maybe under UN jurisdiction, will it probably again get into surveillance or control or regulation, rather than the free open space communication and development communication from people's perspective?
Yes, Sanjay. See, I particularly have a slightly different view of explicitly putting communication as an add-on, not diminishing the importance. For the simple reason, the communication for all perspective, for some reason, call it media reforms, call it technology push, has occurred, although not much to our satisfaction, in various parts of the country. Now, the mainstream media, which in many countries includes the state and the corporate media, and by the way, in all other countries, it's corporate media through and through. So when we are talking about development, and when we are talking about, for example, the World Economic Forum had presentations after presentations of SDGs and investment. So there is a slight element of a certain degree of who wants to get into the, by the way, SDG is a heavy investment, repriority of resources. It's not just an idea, it's not a diffusion of a vaccine, not a diffusion of a pesticide. We are looking at 7 or 8 infrastructural goals. So there is a nexus between the state and the economic institution, but the state is conscious that it has to reach out to the people. That is where it is in a dilemma because it took the media as an ally, but the ally function of the media went overboard in propagating the agenda or the political agenda of the state. Niti Aayog has 182 pages of the SDG targets for the past 4 years. Give me one discussion, Sanjeev, in a prime time television show which focused on SDG. I don't remember. If you do, I might withdraw my words on that. Second is the social media dimension. Sarvash is right. We are over celebrating social media because user generated content is not institutional generated content. Users can be territorialized, demonized, have their own agenda. So let us leave the social media a little bit away in terms of its potential and start looking at institutions, corporations, the state, and the media as probable SDG realizable frameworks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. I think that's an interesting discussion and exchange in terms of how Sanjay sees slightly differently than John. But I think it's an interesting debate about how state, corporates, and people's choices in terms of media and media expression and the contradiction it has for social media and now the OTT platforms, for example. The discussion about SDGs in some form or the other, Sanjay, did take place once in a while, but not in any prominent or consistent manner. And you do not see probably when you have state medias or institutional medias like RSTV and LNTV and DDs, maybe it took place somewhere there and nobody sees it. Nobody knows it around, maybe in some commercial channels as well. But it's an interesting...
No, Sanjay, I did a Google search for the past 3 years. I could not find a single video clip. I am very clear on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sanjay. I would go with what you say. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I sit in Delhi and sometimes I get a feeling that I move around in circles. We keep on hearing about SDGs. Maybe it is in the agencies, in the corridors, not in the media circle. Let me take the next question. Goya, there are 2 questions which got erased in my chat box, but I'm taking the next question, which is addressed to Sanjay. Sanjay, there is a very specific question by Madan, which is saying, Sanjay sir, when it comes to SDG index, as Telangana state is with 67 points, but unemployment is at peak, as unemployment was one of the main struggles for Telangana separate statehood movement. So, how do you explain that?
Um, Sri Sanjeev Kumar, I and the person who raised this question, uh, this is not to kind of hold a brief for the SDG index and the hierarchy of states. SDG index probably is a realization linked to health, support to agriculture, and so on. Even now, in the context of farmers' agitation, the one thing that came across all channels was how Telangana had dealt with increasing the income of the agriculturalists. True, employment generation all over the country is has taken a hit, more so in the post-COVID. But the index that has been drawn up probably doesn't talk about employment and build it into the index. This is my understanding. I may be wrong on that. Okay.
No issue. I understand that. I agree. It's a perspective. There is a very interesting question from Dr. Shivendu Rai to you, Sanjay. Will cross-cultural communication assume a new dimension in the context of multiculturalism?
See, this whole debate about culturalism, multiculturalism, and diversity, I think our country naturally has to take pride because erstwhile, modern, and current, its diversity index is the highest in any part of the world. So, this whole argument of multiculturalism within, which is what sustains us in terms of our identity, in terms of the politics, in terms of the practices. But multiculturalism, as people talk in terms of globalization and media, even if you take the classical theories of McDonaldization, things like that, they have perforce adapted to the changes in and respond to the Indian context. By the way, multiculturalism index is the highest because the maximum spread is in the Indian regional media, and Bhojpuri media corners the next to higher share of ad revenue in digital and mainstream platforms as well. We had never heard of it. That is inclusivity of multiculturalism, thanks to media, thanks to probably in a grudging way, Geo and the way he popularized the content to every migrant laborer in the country.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. Thank you. Young Professor Archana Kumar from Lady Haven College had asked a question which is missed, but I'm remembering what the question she asked about that in the framework which you mentioned and the communication for all in the COVID-19 scenario in SDGs, how do you see it being measured, or what kind of monitoring and evaluation or indicators mechanism could be there, or setting up of targets specifically to be able to make sense and meaning and tangibility of what you're proposing?
Yeah, then I would like to refer once again to the book I quoted, Lee and Vargas. They have outlined a framework and criteria to assess the communication sustainable development goals. And they basically went back to the McBride report. For the people a bit older than in the audience, including myself, we may recall that that famous McBride report of 1980 gave a pretty decent analysis of the then state of the world. It was, by my standards, a bit too much of a dependency perspective, posing first versus the third world, etc., etc. But at least they identified some of the major players, at least those at the top levels of society. They can be complemented with activities at localized levels, grassroots levels, and then you would probably have a decent framework to identify the specific criteria to be assessed. Press freedom obviously is one criteria which is easy to apply because it's already in the SDGs. And India, not surprisingly, together with most Southeast Asian and Southern Asian countries is always put at the bottom when it comes to this kind of freedoms. But the issue, of course, has to be much more diversified and also include community-based activities, community radio, to name just one. So I don't think it's a difficult task to come up with that kind of listing and give it also quantitative dimensions, because that's what one normally needs to make it acceptable and make it researchable.
Thank you, John. There's one more follow-on question from Chandan Kumar. Very interesting about this is he's saying, while we talk about the cohesive nature of communication, I feel that it becomes redundant sometimes. So how can we bring a uniqueness in communication with distracting from communication goal? Without maybe, I think. He's saying, how do we bring this seemingly, becoming redundant sometimes? How do we bring the uniqueness and the greatness about communication runs back before having a goal, communication goal?
Is that directed to me?
That's to you. Chandan has asked this question.
Okay. Yeah, it will need a bit of a rethink. I agree, because most of the goals were developed at national levels and by authorities which think from such kind of a unifying, centralizing objective. I think that the goals which are much more representative for what communication objectives stand for should be looked upon, at least from an exemplary stage, at local level. So good, well-documented case studies should be used as starting points for a development of a specific goal. And that, of course, needs another kind of looking at it, another way of looking at it, and that may need some skills and some people willing to think out of the traditional boxes.
Thank you, John. Professor Sanjay, there's a question from Chandan, and I'll read Vidhu Bhushan Das' question along with it. These are all addressed to you. Sanjay is asking, in times of current global context where media and government walk together, which is what you were referring to also initially, what would be your suggestion and steps to create media innovation centers at state and national level? And there is additional interesting but slightly different question from Vidhu Bhushan Das. He's saying, you put forth your argument of Rajput case in such an interesting and convincing way. He likes it, but he thinks many a times to tell the same thing in various forums, including his own classes. He hardly dares to do so as my students, he's left it incomplete. So two slightly different questions, but I think it'll be nice to hear from you.
Yes, as far as the media and the government and his idea of innovation.
Media innovation centers.
Yeah, media innovation centers. My only advice is, for the past 70 years, we have experimented with many institutional mechanisms. For example, we already have the community information centers argument. It was done in the pre-digital India era. So when Chandan talks about media innovation, perhaps he is referring how could those centers innovatively incorporate SDG awareness for the people. Now, that is a challenge because all the 17 goals are not necessarily information intensive. Wherever they are information intensive, probably the community centers or community information centers, as he talks or points out, can be used. The question to the response to Biju is, um, when the students get agitated and respond as if what the mainstream media is doing is correct, there used to be a limit. When we used to talk about development, students used to ask this question. But Briju, you can very well answer the question, what were they doing, watching for 90 days, 120 days of an inconclusive case which gave a clean check, hours on end to that issue? That question can be posed to the youngsters, and the youngsters will definitely like it and look for other, not necessarily development as a solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. John, I just wanted to, a question from my side. I've been directly involved in communication during COVID times and the challenges which we face. And you have referred to Yavan McPherson's 5 mantras also. And I think it's an interesting take. Now we are at a fatigue end of the communication for COVID. We are actually suffering from infodemic, overload. Every place, every corner, maybe we are sitting in Delhi, that's the reason why we are seeing COVID communication, right? All the materials, communication, visibilities, SMS, OTT, television, whatnot. Have we woken up just because of a crisis or a risk? And probably we are overdoing it. And now at the fag end of the fatigue, the behaviors are down. We are not following the behaviors which are COVID appropriate behaviors, for example. So does the communication, especially development communication, behavior change communication for that matter, works in a short span and not in such a big scale globally?
No, I see your point, and I think that that's not a typical Indian situation. It's all over the place, at least those places I've been following and I have experienced myself. But the issue and the argument I've always used, because I was also invited to discussions in Europe on these issues, the argument I've always used is because they started off, at least in the European context, with the so-called virologists and the epidemiologists and the experts on pandemics, but they didn't really think it through as a communication strategy. And so most often the communication they tried to transmit was not well packaged, not well conceptualized, and hence sometimes contradictory, or looking at it from a short-term versus a long-term perspective, or for the wrong target audiences, etc., etc. So they gradually, of course, fine-tuned their messages and try to accommodate certain needs. As you point out, people cannot be locked up in an isolated format for months without end in sight. But so all this needs to be had to be conceptualized and strategized in a much more phase-based way, phasing in and phasing out, and that unfortunately is a lesson they may have learned the hard way. And of course, this is only one way of looking at it, because if we take the United States as an example, there are more complexities on top of everything else, which are, of course, leading to the unfortunate outcome of so many deaths and still increasing every day.
Yeah.
But I think what we all learn in communication is, and that's true for both education in journalism, as well as in public relations, as well as in advertising, and you name it, we need to conceptualize our message clearly and to make it understood clearly. And in this particular case, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I've been able to observe, that was definitely not the case.
Thank you, John. I know we are running out of time, but I'll take two more questions, one to Sanjay and one to John, and then we will thank. I will also like to remind the participants that the Google form in the chat box, which you can share your feedback on your further questions. We will try to collect those questions and reach out to our panelists and see, maybe share those answers with you. Bidu has also asked a question, John, the idea of including communication for all. But he's saying, I think policymakers did not add it in the list thinking that it cannot be achieved. Will it be possible to achieve communication for all in a diverse society such like ours in terms of caste, patriarchy, gender, socioeconomic, where a group of people don't want to or support to eradicate voice poverty?
I think it's more difficult and complex in the Indian context, and I'm definitely not an expert on that part. But what I meant to see, and you tend to become focused on the concept of communication for all, which basically is a concept which has been around for quite a while. It's communication rights discussion. It started off in the aftermath of the 1980s discussion in a way. It has reached a point that it may need to be addressed in multi-dimensional ways rather than just the all and communication aspects as we normally associate it with. But yeah, to come back to your point, I think that that we need to become more specific, more diversified in what we aim to address. But and I've used the argument already. Press freedom, that's easy to discern and that's easy to analyze. And you can add a few more of these things like community participation, community media, and there you go. Then you gradually build up capacity to make it a comprehensive goal to handle.
Thank you. I think Stifar Nandi has asked a question. If I'm not wrong, Joyas has reposted that question because I lost the chat. Professor Sevras hovered around the context of poverty. My question is, would it be right to point out that one of the main components of attributes to poverty is improper distribution of wealth in a state? If it is so, then an argument can be made that the same agents of bureaucracy who are participating in the segregation of wealth are the same people litigating for incorporating together to reduce poverty. So should we rather contextualize the matter just as welfare?
True. That's a simple answer indeed. You have a good point. And if you go to the Sustainable Development Report, Sanjay also quotes from it. In the Indian case, the Sustainable Development Goals, which happen to be met more or less, or at least on target, is number one, no poverty and clean water and sanitation and decent work and economic growth and climate action, and all the others are a bit dubious. Some of them are still at a questionable level. But no poverty and the argument made for it has obviously got some ground and some excitement to be discussed and to handle it with.
Thank you. Aniruddha has asked a question and Sanjay has answered this in the chat about voice poverty. Would you like to add, Sanjay, or should we take it that you are wanting to close that discussion there, or is it okay? Would you like to take another couple of sentences to say what you are saying in the chat?
No, I agree with him that the marginalized and the weak have not figured commensurate with their problems and representation in the media.
Right.
But at the same time, do we call it voice poverty, as he has pointed out? or whether it is low decibel voice which is not carrying forward, or do the elite have an ear for the poverty and their voice? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Well, that brings back to me the last question, and it has been a fascinating discussion, fascinating, intriguing, and very insightful presentations. And thank you very much to the participants, to the panelists. And Sunil, do you have a question? I see you have been itching to ask a question. Do you want to unmute?
Unmute, please.
Unmute.
Sunil, unmute.
Yeah. Because I will rather congratulate both Sanjay and Jan for their very insightful presentation. And I was more happy because my students and other participants have raised so very relevant questions regarding voice poverty and also regarding the multiculturalism and how, particularly the pandemic, when the government have the provisions of ending poverty and yet there is the unequal distribution of wealth, and in those times also it's not only unequal distribution of wealth, but there is also unequal communication facilities for the people. Now in these times, SDGs, again, I fully agree with Sanjay when he said that the SDGs have been have to be looked from the particularly the corporate point of view, and 7 SDGs or 8 SDGs are for infrastructural development. And there lies the biggest problem for the government. It's not simply when we talk about ending hunger, when we talk about ending poverty, only by merely formulating policies will not do. There needs to be a lot of infrastructural development and investments need to be made. If, for example, the farmer agitation he has also mentioned, which is very, very crucial, even in terms of the SDGs and its implementation. But I am really thankful to Jan and Sanjay and also Sanjeev ji for your brilliant moderation and the kind of work you did. Really, from my side, I am really happy and I am grateful and thankful to all of you.
Thank you, Sunil. Jan, I'm itching to quote George Bernard Shaw's quote about the greatest illusion about communication is that it has happened. And I do not know how would you react to that. And Sanjay is also, I'm trying to make Sanjay smile a little so that we all live in the illusion that the communication we do, whether it's commercial communication or development communication, how will that illusion that we are doing our job and probably sometimes do not link it with ROIs and SORIs in terms of every time we have to prove ourselves that why invest in communication. I face this question almost every day, and whenever I have said this question about measuring the return on investment for communication, we have not been able to come up with a convincing answer or a compelling answer, or even when I work in CSR communication, the SORIs kind of a thing are completely undefined. Even today, we were having this discussion in one of the premier organizations which conducts large-scale communication. What is ROI or what is SORI, for example? Do you think we can actually go back, other than going cost-benefit analysis, to making convincing arguments and compelling arguments about the real value? I mean, rhetorically, everybody says it's a wonderful thing. We must do it. We should do it. We must invest in it. But we want to put money into it, real money and real measurement. It doesn't seem to happen.
For me?
Yeah.
No, that's a very important question, and I think that you made a reference to one of my activities in the past, the chairmanship of the Scientific Committee for the World Congress on Communication for Development, which was co-hosted by the World Bank, FAO, and an NGO. One of the questions as the chair of that scientific committee was, prove to us that the communication has an impact, and we needed to make that convincing argument not for communication scholars but for the decision makers at the World Bank and all these bodies. And we tried. We looked for arguments. Some of us were much more in the quantitative analysis. They dug up figures from certain well described cases like Prodorit in Mexico, as you may recall. That was a case study in the 80s, 70s, 80s, which was showcased as the proof of the role of communication for development. But even in that particular case, I may have the correct figure wrong, but it was not exceeding 10% success ratio. So quantitatively speaking, you cannot make that case. It's very difficult on the basis of an economic kind of assessment to make the case for communication, with some rare exceptions, of course. But what we made the argument for was that if you delete communication from some of the success stories, the story itself evaporates or is no longer feasible. So the project wouldn't have happened. And so that's the case for communication. It's a qualitative approach which you need to make. And if you can sit down with these decision makers for more than just an elevator talk, as it's normally meant to be, then you can convince them that communication has a relevance and an impact. But if you are only asked to do that for 30 seconds or 1 minute maximum in all these spots, etc., then it's very difficult to make the case. I agree with you. And over the years, I have learned that there are certain ways to improve on the skills, but I'm not saying that I'm the best communicator in that regard.
Thank you, Jean. I'll be happy if you take this up in terms of where you left during that meeting, in terms of actually doing convincing argument for return on investment, so that we go beyond rhetoric and also put a little bit of money and effort into it.
Right.
Sanjay, would you like to come in? You have been a director for IMC and Hyderabad and now Manipal.
Yeah, Sanjay, the question that you raised, the problem with organizations, probably the dilemma that you're facing, is a kind of investment upon return. And I think over a period of time, we have come to realize that there are certain intangibles which can be factored and measured. For example, take the mobile phone revolution. If you take the mobile phone revolution, or whatever you call it, the intangible is that everybody has a device in their hand. And everybody makes it a point to communicate to whom they want to. And the person who wants to listen will tolerate the missed call from the person if they want to reach them. So there's a whole lot of benefits, tangible, intangible, that can be measured. Unfortunately, a monetized, exponential, graph-oriented analysis will not give you the answers. I would advise move beyond and take a holistic view. Maybe you will see a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Sanjay, I'm also just giving you a last opportunity because I got very intrigued by the title of the book which you mentioned about 18th Elephant.
Yeah.
Is it the 18th SDG which John has mentioned about communication for all? Are you relating it to what John said? The 18th elephant is communication for all? Or would you like to tell me what is this about?
No. It was just a kind of a reaction to John. Actually, a farmer had a dispute, had a property of 17 elephants.
Oh,
And
okay.
he gave a formula
Right,
to the
right.
children, according to which one of the elephants had to be cut. So the king who was passing by added his elephant, the 18th elephant, and allowed for a division, which fulfilled the farmer's wish. And the elephant rode back, the king rode back on his elephant. That is the story of the 18th elephant I've used in 1990s to talk about how a newspaper can intervene in the development of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Professor Sevras and Professor Sanjay. It has been a fascinating interaction and discussion, and your presentations have still left us with a lot of, intriguing questions, and they're tingling in my head, and also the participants. I hope we had more time, but I'm sure we will be able to, come back to you with more questions, and look forward to your answers and your insightful wisdom to take us forward in the field of communication. I thank you both from, sincerely for taking us time and sharing your perspective, your views, and answering the questions. Thank you very much, sir. It has been a pleasure. And I would like to thank Joya and Anjuman and Tejpuri University for giving us this opportunity to, have these wonderful people come back on a platform and share their thoughts and ideas, and also challenge us to think further and deeper in ways which we can serve the agenda and the purpose of communication for all. Thank you very much, Anjuman. I give it back to you, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to moderate this session. It has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar. It has been indeed a wonderful session. I'm really, really grateful to Professor Service and Professor Sanjay for this very insightful and very thought-provoking discussion that we've had today, where the role of communication has been, emphasized, re-emphasized, and actually been nailed home. And that we cannot really separate the development goals from communication. The challenge now remains how we, as communicators, the community of communication scholars, would advocate on behalf of communication, advocate for communication to the international community, and put communication on the agenda of the international policy, where communication can indeed be something which is really, really invested upon. So we have to really make the way from information to communication for all. So that's the challenge that we are all facing at this moment now. And let us all work together. I am really hopeful that this webinar is going to give us the way forward to think about this, to deliberate about it, to reflect about it, and create a way forward. I thank both our panelists and Dr. Sanjeev Kumar for moderating today's session. I also thank all the participants for your very, very engaged participation during this entire session, for raising so many questions and making your views. And I request all of you to join us back again tomorrow with the same kind of enthusiasm. And I would also like to remind everyone to kindly fill up the feedback form. That's very important for us too. Looking forward to tomorrow for another very engaging and interesting session. Tomorrow we'll be having with us three speakers. Dr. Paulo Mephalopoulos, who is country representative of UNICEF Chile. Professor Sisir Basu, professor in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Benares Hindu University, and Professor Claudia Lago, Professor, University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. So we look forward to three very interesting presentations again tomorrow. So let us join back. And with that, I would like to conclude for today. Thank you very much to everyone. Thanks again to Professor Service, Professor Sanjay, and Dr. Sanjeev Kumar, and to all the participants. Thanks once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good day. Bye bye.